Welcome back to the FACEIT Invitational here for the challenger scene in Europe. We are into the picks and bans phase for game number 3 between Reason Gaming and Ninjas in Pyjamas. So we'll get that up on screen right now for you guys.
Okay, so the band champions will be Vi Kassadin, Kale, Elise, Lee Sin, and Yasuo. And of course, Kassadin is going to be the recurring band pretty much all the way through every game that we have during this tournament. I mean, you don't want to be letting that Kassadin go to any of these mid laners.
I mean, you put it in perspective that Fnatic had 2 bans taken away from them in LCS the other day. And they were like, okay, well, I guess we'll just ban Kassadin and leave everything else open.
Yeah.
So everybody realizes the importance of banning Kassadin because he's a champion that just scales so well. If you get 2 kills, you pretty much, even if you're behind, you're fine on Kassadin. But not in this game is Kassadin. The bans are pretty similar to game number 1 and 2. A couple of differences in the fact that Lee Sin has been banned out, so Armin won't have that available. Beansu looks like they might want to select Annie as their first pick. So we'll see whether that does get locked in.
It's a pretty reliable support and first pick.
Yeah.
It's sometimes seen in the mid lane, but most likely going to mean that support role.
It'll be support.
Yeah. Oh, right. Don't say that, Stress, because as soon as we go into the next pick, it's going to be like, all right, well, there's another support. There's Fresh.
It's going to be support.
Okay. Okay.
So I hope Reason aren't watching, and now they're just like, we're going to play.
They probably
in
are.
The but now what this does let through is Kha'Zix. Right as I was saying it, they actually hover over Kha'Zix and Jinx, which are 2 very strong champions that work well off each other, the way they combo their resets and, you know, the get excited from Jinx. So not surprising that both of them have been locked in here. Both of them are played by NIP, and both of them are very strong in the hands of NIP too.
Yeah, we've seen, this is kind of more like a comfort pick. You typically wouldn't say that other team is like, by picking assassins and very risky champions, this is comfort. But when it comes to NIP, it really is. And we've seen them do that so many times over the last couple of weeks that they know exactly what they're doing, even as the first couple of picks, and you would know exactly what's coming because Kale's been banned out. A lot of the big picks that are really counter out those assassins have been taken off the board through the bans. So why not just first pick Jinx and Kha'Zix?
And we're kind of in a situation where I'm wondering where Reason will go here, because if they pick their mid laner, I mean, NIP are always going to have the opportunity to counter pick in mid. So if they were to pick a mid early, it might give away their team composition. Now, they want to run that Wukong jungle again. This time, of course, Yasuo won't be available for them to combat that with, but we've already talked about how Wukong is a fairly strong early game jungler himself.
Yeah. Like, Wukong, typically all he needs is to get into fights, and then he's good. The only reason why he's weak in lane is because he's got a weak laning phase. But his ultimate is fantastic in team fights, and that's one of the biggest reasons why you pick that Wukong out. But it just kind of limit what you have as a team, because you want to be going for those straight-up brawly team fights where you have everyone in one place, everyone who's going to be knocked up by the Cyclone. You don't want these kind of sparse team fights. And it's interesting that they've decided to go with that when they know NIP will be more scattered.
They've chosen to take the LeBlanc away. And now, to me, picking LeBlanc blind is a very bold pick because it allows you to do this and pick a champion that works pretty well against LeBlanc and in his own right is pretty strong in the mid lane but has counter picks available. Zed should do pretty well here against LeBlanc in lane.
Typically, AD mid laners do very well against LeBlanc. There's very little she can do about that. And, yep, he'll just jump on LeBlanc and then she will die. So either they go for a lane swap, which is fairly unlikely. Well, they could, but it's more unlikely. I don't think she'd want to play against Zoro's Mundo either. So, yeah.
I kind of feel like the LeBlanc there was to deter the Gragas.
Right.
Which I think is fine. But there are more consistent mid laners. I wouldn't have minded seeing an Orianna there. Yeah. Now, of course, this all depends on how the game plays out. If LeBlanc can get a couple of early kills, by all means, LeBlanc can still be relevant. But through the early laning phase and through just the laning phase in general, it is difficult for LeBlanc against an AD mid laner.
Well, it did deter the Gragas pick. Yeah. They just went with a Zed pick instead.
Yeah, that's the problem.
In this case, better.
You deter the pick, but you end up maybe putting yourself in a situation that is more difficult to deal with, which could well be the problem here for Reason. However, we've already seen that Reason in game number 1 got themselves a good lead. They kind of let it go a little bit, but then ended the game rather suddenly.
Yeah. I mean, as a result of picking up that Zed, they have made their composition very, very squishy. Like, they have the Zed in there, they have the Kha'Zix and the Jinx. They have very little tankiness behind them, so they could potentially just grind them down in a team fight. Just go with more tanky builds, especially when you have a Renekton who's going to be going into that dominance, and then you have someone like Wukong who's going for the more sustained fight. They won't be able to survive that.
And now down in the bottom lane, we can see the Sivir pick up for Reason. And now Sivir Annie is quite a high burst lane. I mean, there's quite a lot of damage that's going to come from Sivir with the Boomerang Blade, with the Ricochet as well. So there's a considerable amount of damage there. They just have to be careful to avoid the hook and the Flame Chompers, as there's quite a lot of in-lane crowd control here that'll come from Ninjas in Pyjamas.
Right. So there is some tankiness from NIP, but that's Mundo.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a taunt. Okay, you do have to focus him, but you can temporarily ignore him while you just kill all of his damage, and then it's just Mundo. So that's kind of like the biggest concern from NIP, if they find themselves in a fight where everyone's in the same place, and you have like a 5 versus 5. But, of course, they're running assassins, so they'll be looking for those smaller pick fights.
Yeah, that it wouldn't be too surprising to see them even chase those in the beginning. And Zed is another champion that has a lot of mobility. I mean, even as much as LeBlanc. So LeBlanc, if she tries to roam to look for maybe a 3v2 in the bottom, Zed will follow that up pretty quickly. So will both junglers, and NIP have the teleport available. So, I mean, Reason could look for an early roam out of LeBlanc, but could get answered by a 5v3.
Yeah. And, okay, so another 1 minute until we jump into this game. So what haven't we talked about? We've spoken about everything, I think, in terms of picks. But the individual lanes is going to be Mundo versus Renekton, so it's going to be another more slow lane. I think there's very few top laners or top lane combinations which try to actively kill each other.
I mean, we've seen a couple of different top laners. I mean, you look at a player like JWoww.
Right.
He plays a lot of Kha'Zix top, which, you know, has its place, because he's so comfortable in playing them that he knows how the lane matchups work. But currently, the meta is you pick a tanky champion that doesn't die, and then you just sit in lane.
Yeah, that is meta.
I feel like we're maybe downplaying top lane. It's not to say that you know, you don't have to be good at that top lane. I mean, we've seen in LCS how good top laners can be.
Right.
But it's just one of those things that I don't think it lends itself to flashy play as such. There's not quite so much to you know, use Jinx's passive name, get excited about.
Yeah. And it's something that has a lot going on, like, under the hood, but you can't, like, talk about. It's just like, well, they're killing minions and they're making the right things happen, but it's like watching a wildlife documentary rather than League of Legends.
Yeah, I suppose it is. I mean, there are a few things in that lane. It's a lot to do with lane spacing and positioning and your waves and where they are in the lane for when you engage, because you don't want to engage at a point where you'll end up worse off and then they can set the lane to freeze in front of their tower where they'll just like to sit and farm it. That you don't want to engage at a point that'll let your opponent push forward. And there's a couple of different little tricks you can do on a couple of champions. I mean, Beansu on Renekton could look for you know, a very strong level 2 play on Renekton, which isn't all that uncommon, but against a champion like Mundo, unless you get it absolutely right, he just kind of regens up. So it's one of those things that the tricky things in lane are kind of offset by the sustainability of most top laners.
That's quite exciting.
Yeah. Sorry, there's some theory of the top lane for you.
Yeah, and we have actually jumped to a pause. So
Yeah, we're in a pause, so I'll not continue with any top lane theory anymore. But
yeah.
I'll let Pulse give you the mid lane theory instead.
Mid lane theory, colors and flashy lights and Zed happening.
Mid lane is more exciting.
I mean, like, especially when you have two laners with teleports. Well, not teleports, like flashes and instant blinks, I think would be the better way to go about it. Super cool things can happen. Like, you've seen Faker with the interaction with Blind Pick. That game where it's like two of the Zeds going at it. Super cool. But you can have the same thing happening with LeBlanc, who's got the distortions jumping all over the place.
I've got a question for you.
Okay, shoot.
Do you think Faker would look as flashy if he played top lane? Do you think he'd find some new mechanics?
He'd find a way to make it flashy. Because I feel like Faker's ability to be a good player is... I mean, he's a good player, but I feel like he tries to make flashy plays just so he looks awesome.
Do you know, I actually think it's... well, I don't want to say it's the opposite of that. I think he's... Because he's always consistent. It's not like he pushes boundaries and, like, oversteps. I think he just, like, knows the limit of every champion that he plays to the point where it just looks flashy, but to him, he's just playing the game.
Yeah.
So
he is a different breed of individual. I'm still under the opinion he's not human, but...
That's a big claim.
It is.
That's a big claim.
Big
but
claims being made on FACEIT's Challenge Invitational.
hopefully,
from Milan, Italy.
this pause won't last too long, because I want to get into this game.
I do
because
as well.
I want to see how these two teams fare off again, because we've had two games that have opened very, very close. This one should be a little bit more explosive out of the gates with this Zed against LeBlanc. That's two, as we said, highly mobile, high damage champions that you can expect to start trading fairly early on in this game.
Definitely. So, taking a look at the bot lane, which is Sivir Annie, which is actually not a pairing we've seen today, I don't think.
No, not today.
Yeah, we've usually seen the more trade-heavy lanes with Annie, like Lucian, like Jinx as well. Jinx is going to be on the opposing team alongside that Fresh from Miffy, which is a more trade lane. Probably going to win the early game against Chrisland until Chrisland gets a couple of levels under his belt. Yeah,
I mean, we had the stun duration reduction on Annie, which means the early game potency is a little bit less. Not too much at risk anymore of getting stunned for 1.75 seconds, which used to be pretty terrifying at like level 2 or even level 1 if you overstepped, and Incinerate just came out and froze you in place. And you ended up losing all your health, having to go back behind the turret and recall, and you stayed level 1. We saw that like a couple of weeks ago in a game where just an AD carry ended up so far behind from being level 1 for so long after getting stunned by Annie that thankfully there was a bit of a change there. And Annie's still very potent. As soon as you hit level 6, the stun on Tibbers is considerably longer.
Yeah, it just means you don't walk into lane, get stunned, go back to base, walk into lane, get stunned, and drop low again, so you never actually get into lane. What if Nami will be picked again? Because Nami was basically not picked because Annie existed.
Yeah, that's a fair point, that Annie pretty much did the same thing but was a lot easier to hit.
Yeah.
I think Nami has a place in the support role, but right now, Annie's still too good because of the flash Tibbers engage. Thresh is too good because of the lane control, and Leona's too good because of Solar Flare and the ability to, engage on an AD carry and it be very difficult to defend against. But you can see we are headed into the game here for game number 3 here between Ninjas in Pyjamas against Reason Gaming. We are on the Rift.
Both these guys shooting out of their spawn pad. We'll see what they've decided to build. So, Doran's items all around, which is fairly standard of nowadays. Sometimes you'll see a gold item from support, but more than likely, they'll be picking up the Doran shield to mitigate some of that auto-attack harassment.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that a lot of people were kind of wondering whether it would work, and it took about 24 hours, and everybody realized, yep, that's a thing. And now everybody picks up Doran's shield. I mean, you even see in the mid lane, Zed has picked up Doran's shield, which... okay, it won't give him extra damage, but he doesn't really need it right off the bat. He just needs to be able to survive any harass. There's a lot of fallback warnings just in case Freeze gets into a little bit of trouble there.
Freeze should definitely fall back.
Yeah, I don't think it was
like 7 times.
Quite that urgent, but nevertheless. We can see the Doran shield starts on supports, and now what that kind of does is offset the gold per 5 from Ancient Coin or anything, any of the new support items here on the 2014 season beginning patch. And the reason for that is a lot of supports will actually claim that Sightstone is gold generation in itself, because you don't need to build towards, you don't need to buy wards, which means you can build tanky with that Ruby Sightstone earlier to go alongside Doran's shield. You don't die quite so early and survive the lane.
I'm actually not sure how you kept yourself so composed when Mundo was laughing and cracking jokes.
I looked away. I made sure.
You could still hear it. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do it, but either way, we're going to be jumping into the laning phase, and another reason why Nuke has picked up the Doran shield is because, well, he just needs to stop the auto-attack harassment, because he won't be engaging at level 1. He'll be engaging at level 2, 3, 4. But as long as he can keep himself sustained up until that point, that's what he's looking for over, being straight aggressive from level 1. He's not Riven.
Yeah, he will throw out those shurikens, though, at the same time and put out as much damage down onto Senkux as possible. And that's one of the things about running an energy champion is you know exactly when you're going to be able to harass. It's all on your cooldowns for harass. Of course, when you're using a full combo, it's, you have to energy balance a little bit better, but in lane, you can try to harass whenever.
Yeah, Senkux going to throw down the harassment. Doran's shield won't stop the magic damage harass from Senkux, but both of these guys just going at it. That's kind of what we expect for the first couple of levels. But as soon as NukeDuck starts getting his third ability, we might see those sparks fly. Bottom lane, however, we will see the NIP duo lane being pushed back to their turret, which is kind of what happens when you have an Annie in lane. Just kind of sits in lane, or sits in the bush rather, and destroys out the auto attacks and looks generally scary.
The other thing that having this Zed in the middle lane will do is allow the blue buff to be given to Armin. Armin can now secure his own blue buffs. Will give him faster clear. He'll have his abilities off cooldown. Will have better mana control while in the jungle. So that'll be a nice little thing for him at around the 7.5 minute mark when he gets his 7.5 minute blue. So we'll be able to farm a little bit quicker at that point in the game and should be able to get himself into the lanes a little bit easier.
So Crescent actually out-farming Jinx significantly already into this lane. They have been pushed up against the turret. As early CS quite difficult to pick up. Usually you need the help of your support to weaken those minions to the right HP. 2 tower shots and an auto attack onto the melee minions, and then 1 tower shot and an auto attack for the ranged minions.
And now Reason are keeping a good track of where Armin is in the jungle right now. They've pinged on the upper side of the jungle because they know that's roughly where he is. I think Ninjas in Pyjamas feel there's a ward there, but both teams already aware of Armin's positioning there. So they do have to once again show us that they're pretty good on predicting Armin in the jungle.
Armin's going to head towards the opposing jungle and see if he can find Wukong, who is heading up to the top lane, see if he can get something done. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, though, Senkux has moved on to NukeDuck. NukeDuck kind of just hanging around once again, but his energy will be back up, and LeBlanc's mana will not be up to the same shape that that energy will be. However, Ammon sitting around the sides, and he has come in from a different angle this time round, so he might be able to make it happen. Move on the top lane. Karashi has jumped in. There's the slice and dice. Another flash towards him. Binsu secures the first blood. Yeah, and that really is just what you have to do against the Mundo lane, is make sure that you kill him before his ultimate is available, and make sure you secure that kill. Armin couldn't find his way into lane in the middle lane. Took a little bit too long on it, and didn't look like Ninjas in Pyjamas answer that first blood with any response. Yeah, so Senkux still surviving against NukeDuck. It hasn't been as explosive as we perhaps thought, but as soon as that death mark is available, then he might be jumping in. And inevitably, now that I've said that, he'll just like sit at his turret. But Senkux being pushed back to his own, speaking of turrets. And now Crescent also taking some hits in the bottom lane. Yeah, down that bottom lane, hook doesn't quite land. And they'll be looking for those hooks to land so they can get clean engagements in this. They do not want Annie to be able to flash Tibbers them after level 6, which is pretty difficult to avoid. You can see now Zed has reached the point where his damage on his abilities is significant enough that Senkux cannot sit behind that minion wave for too long. So what do we expect from the next couple of minutes? Because we said LeBlanc will want to be roaming. However, because Zed is on the field, do you really want to be going out of lane when you could maybe find a Zed following you in a bush off to the side? It's actually going to limit how much Senkux can roam, and not only will he not be able to face down Zed, he won't be able to roam either, so he'll be trapped in the middle lane. Yeah, and NukeDuck right now has hit level 6, so is able to go all in and even roam if he decided to. It makes his potency right now almost its peak. I mean, without Zed getting a lot of kills, this really is the point in the game where he feels comfortable to start that ball rolling down the hill that is Reason game. Indeed. So, got the first couple items being picked up by the mid laners, which will be the Vampire, except in fact, more interestingly enough, the bottom lane, Ammon has jumped in. There's the stun from Barney D. That's going to be the Q. Just keeping that one target in place, and most importantly, Ammon, who will be unable to go too much further on that bottom lane, however, has found himself LeBlanc in the river. Will have to take an alternative route back to his jungle. Yeah, Senkux did have a small window there to rotate down towards bottom lane as Reason. Looked like they might have been in trouble, but now that NukeDuck is back in lane, they know they've got to be in the lane to prevent each other from roaming, because the first one that picks up a kill off that really could turn the lane on its head. So, onto these first couple items. 3 Doran's items picked up by Binsu, really looking to try and dominate this lane before Mundo gets out of hand, but it doesn't seem like that big Doran's item investment helped too much. Yeah, I mean, the Chain Vest is going to allow Mundo to survive through quite a lot here, and
Of course, Mundo doesn't exactly need the extra damage items because the Burning Agony will do quite a lot of damage. Also, hitting the Infected Cleavers will do quite a lot of damage as well. So he's able to build straight tank. The hook, nice spell shield out by Chrisland.
Chrisland's actually been really on point with those spell shields. He actually blocks the right ability instead of knowing that skill shots are probably on their way and just hit spell shield and just hope for the best. He's actually been waiting for the skill shot that's going to matter the most before activating spell shield.
Yeah, and that's a sign of a player that is confident on Civ. You're not just hoping that, you know, you spell shield the right thing.
Indeed. Something I definitely do when I'm playing Civ.
Is that do the right thing or the
I'm actually in ranked at the moment. It's kind of sad. I didn't touch rank. I know you did. You were balling it out and ended up in like silver or something.
Wow, I did not end up in silver, but you know, nearly. However, I think everybody has a foot to stand on with the argument if they didn't place where they expected to. However, they've given the blue buff over to Nuke Duck. So cooldown reduction, it's only 10% now. Has been reduced ever since the preseason patch. So, you know, it'll help Zed, but I wonder whether it would have helped Armin more. Because it's not like going against a LeBlanc, you need cooldowns. Pretty much LeBlanc's paper thin, so you deathmark her, razor her, and then you pretty much have killed her already.
That's pretty technical. You razor her.
Razor shuriken, sorry. I meant to say
then you kill her.
Yeah.
And you hit her multiple times.
I mean, it's completely fine to give the blue buff over.
Yeah, it is.
It's a normal decision to make. I just think Armin may have liked to have had it more.
It depends on the jungler, and it depends what the call was made. It's probably like, do you want this blue? And Nuke Duck is probably like, okay, yeah, sure. But you do sometimes see that, in fact, Freeze in the bottom lane will be momentarily actually hit by the Boomerang Blade both ways, and Barney D didn't quite have the damage to finish him off. That was also Trashy coming in there. Hasn't used the Cyclone just yet, so he might be able to go for the tower dive if Freeze decides to play with fire. Ammon hanging around the area. What's he actually doing on mana? Actually not too badly. Nuke Duck, though, dropped very low. That blue buff isn't helping him right now. There's the flash forwards, and Sencooks picks that one up. And
the blue buff actually given away, and the dragon as well here. They're not going to be able to contest that. There's reason will find their footing in the lane. It looked like Sencooks just managed to land quite a lot of harassment in that lane down on Zed, and it's not something you'd all too commonly expect there.
Another reason why they should have just let Ammon have the blue buff. Not only does it help him clear the jungle, but he wouldn't have donated it to LeBlanc. And that's actually a pretty significant thing, because those blue buffs were probably starting to time out, and Sencooks is going to have that for another couple minutes now.
Yeah, they were very close to timing out, actually. It was...
wow! What the hell did that even happen?
Well, it looked like Trashy crossed the wards that were by Wraiths. So he was either sending it to the base to try and pick him up on the fountain, and it just coincidentally hit him by the Wraiths.
I hope that's the reason.
Or Freeze was like, he's going to be greedy and stay and get Wraiths, and then recall and get the health from Wraiths with the regen. I picked up the kill.
Either way, that's pretty great. Sencooks locks up Nuke Duck in the middle lane.
Nuke Duck wants that blue buff back. He's not happy about this.
And he doesn't necessarily need it, but it's a matter of pride at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he probably said to Ammon, look, I can carry with this blue buff. And like, instantly takes the kill.
I wouldn't be too surprised if that was the case. But Nuke Duck will recall, but on the hunt has been used.
Barney D throws down Tibbers, juking off to the side, trying to eliminate some of that damage. Armin has come in, Taste Their Fear comes out, and the passive slowing him down. Miffy is the one to claim that kill.
And that was, you know, it looked like an engage from Reason there. I believe they went for the flash engage with Barney D by the looks of the cooldowns, and couldn't quite catch on, but Nuke Duck looking for the kill in the mid.
And Trashy follows up. There's the Cyclone. He will gradually drop into the ground.
Jungle position is so important right now. We've just seen it turn two ganks, seen it turn two engages on their head. It's just the case of these teams have got to be a little bit careful of where they're taking fights.
Well, rip in peace, Chrisland.
Yeah, Chrisland couldn't survive through that one. Managed to spell shield off one of the flame jumpers, but the hook lands and picks up another kill.
And that's actually one of the things. You can actually throw skill shots down when the other person is expecting to spell shield. So you just like double mind games the spell shield, and then you just like block the flame choppers instead.
You force them to spell shield the wrong ability.
Kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But Trashy, Bintu making this rotation in the top lane. 0-0. Going to try and clear this one out, but Mundo is just going to have to use himself to clear out these minions. Got another 3 left in that caster wave, and it should be enough to take it out. Zoro still stays around, though. He should be able to be picked up by this one. Double flash comes out to take him down. There it is. Amin has come out. He might be able to pick up this kill. Binsu and Trashy can probably 2v1 him, but don't quite have the cooldowns just yet. Amin realizes that's the case.
Yeah, Trashy was a little bit too far back in the lane. Couldn't quite get on to land the damage, and I don't think he's got the damage to actually pick up Beansuit at all there. And really, that was just a case of Zoro needlessly staying in lane. I'm not too sure why he'd try and fight that after the tower went down.
Maybe he just assumed the position of Amin was a little bit closer than he actually was. That seems like it, since the jungle was in the area. But, well, it didn't work out. So, first big items start to be picked up by these AD carries, fairly conventionally by Jinx, is going to be the Bloodthirster. It's basically the only item you pick up first on Jinx, followed by usually the Static Shift. Yeah, and Sivir opting for a Bloodthirster as well by the builds. Sidesteps the hook, manages to get away to safety. Pretty smooth. So, mid lane, that's going to be LeBlanc. Actually itemizing the needlessly large rod first, and, well, I guess it makes a lot more sense than the Fiends of Holy Grail in this situation, because you won't need the extra magic resist. And Zomnies is probably not the first item you want to go for. I'm assuming that that's going to be a DFG. Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty certain that that'll be a DFG, but we'll see how that works out here. I mean, it'll do a good job of chunking through Mundo, who is trying to trade with Beansu here. Dominus not available here. Sadism has been popped. Lands another briefcase, and Beansu wanders off. He will have to go back to his base at this point. Not sure if Mundo can take down the rest of the turret, but both of these junglers are going to converge. Trashy has definitely seen Amin, and he's going to try and go for this fight. Amin jumps over the wall and pops into the Baron, into the Dragon Pit. Beansu stuck around. Dominus will be available in just about 10 seconds. And they know that Amin is not around to gank. So Beansu will have Dominus up and will be pretty secure in the top lane. That was a Deathfire Grasp being picked up, so we were right. It's always nice having our predictions come true. Yeah, not when they like pick up parts of an item and then go back and then like go for Warmogs instead. I actually said I said Sunfire Cape or Randu instead of Sunfire Cape at one point on a cast. Okay. For LeBlanc. Well, Beansu is getting taken down pretty quickly here. Deathmark has been popped. Won't pick up the kill. And bottom lane, we do see them pushing on towards the turret. Not enough damage to take out Beansu in the top lane. Okay. They might have enough to push in this turret on the next wave, but that means that's a huge commitment in the top lane, meaning that LeBlanc is just going to push in the mid lane, along with Wukong. Barney D gets hooked in the bot. Box comes down. Super Mega Death Rocket chained into that. Going to mop up that kill very quickly. Chrisland just left a farm under this turret. Yeah, Chrisland does have to be a little bit careful, as does Armin, because it looked like Reason took down the turret during that little bot lane skirmish. Zoro also pushing on pretty hard into his top lane. A little bit strange, because Zed decided to make the commitment to top lane, great, but they didn't have the minions to take the turret, and Trashy and Sencook just carried on pushing. They're actually going to pick up this second turret, and oh, what? That damage from Sencook instantly deleted Amin. And that's the Deathfire Grasp. Zoro has found his way into lane. He may be caught out here. The distortion comes down. They've got to be careful. They have to keep that other distort point occupied. In fact, Sencook is going to go back to Trashy to keep him safe. The damage that just came out from Sencook, we didn't even quite catch it on screen. Yeah. Massive damage with that Deathfire Grasp as well. It was basically 80% of his HP in one ability because of both of those procs at the same time. Rotation from Freeze means they have enough damage, and Distortion comes out just to clear out that minion wave. But Jinx in one place with a turret will be taking that down very quickly with Pow Pow on that switcheroo. Likewise, Reason Gaming have just had good rotations and resulted in more towers, but because NIP are now grouping up, Freeze able to take that one down. That's the second turret even. And that puts this game at 1,000 gold in the lead for Reason Gaming. They've been in this situation before. In game number 1, it was very similar to this. And NIP did start to answer them back. And will look to take down the dragon. Neither team is looking for the engage here. Reason Gaming are a little low. It's not quite the fight they're looking for just yet. I'm going to go ahead and recall, but this is still the rotation from Reason Gaming, seeing what they can find out. Zoro is actually caught in the jungle. They saw them go past that ward. Lantern across the wall will save his life, but Zoro didn't necessarily have to take that route. That tower is very low. And Reason looking to push on towards it. They know how low it is. They know they've got good wave clear here. So it's only a matter of time should they choose to stick around, but it looks like they'd rather reposition for another second. Ammon has come back from base. He's just gone back and bought. And NIP are still looking way more healthy than Reason Gaming, despite taking the dragon and making the first move. So Reason Gaming are in this awkward situation where they can push the wave, but they can't go too much further than that.
And already they have to be careful that they don't step forward, because Senkux has a lot of damage. This Z pickup has not worked the way NIP wanted it to. We mentioned that should LeBlanc, find kills in that lane, which are fairly difficult to do, that Z just doesn't become too much of a factor anymore.
It may have been the case where it's just like, well, they picked LeBlanc, Z is good against LeBlanc, let's pick Z, rather than it's necessarily a stronger part of his champion pool, which feels like it's the case. But at the moment, he's still got a big item. He's still got that Blades of the Ruin King, which is, of course, usually the first item you pick on Zed because of the interaction with the ultimate and that extra damage being amplified.
And I mean, it's not something we discussed yet in this game, but aside from some of the mixed damage that Zara Zero will bring to the table, NIP's team is purely attack damage based. So the longer this game goes, the more Reason will be able to build armor. And until NIP can build armor shred on multiple members of their team, it may be difficult for Reason to be stopped in this.
Right, and he will flash forwards. There's the tip as lands onto Ammon again. He has not been having a good day. The middle inhibitor turret might well be falling. It will be. This is 19 minutes into the game. The inhibitor surely will fall on top of that. Well, this is NIP going in one by one. Nuketook wants to try and get a kill. Jumping onto Sencook. Doesn't quite land his full burst. Uses that living shadow to get back. Jumps over the wall. He's got the moves, but Mundo doesn't. Miffy has come back in. Freeze is trying to offer all the damage he can. The hook will land onto Beansu. Not quite the person you want to drag back into your team. And currently no casualties from Reason Gaming. Zoro Zero attempting to keep up the chase. Freeze, Miffy, and Zoro Zero in very good shape. They get the hook again onto Krislin, but they delete that fresh with all those cooldowns back up for Senkux.
Yeah, Miffy got absolutely removed from that fight. And that's one of the problems. I was watching the cooldown timers, and Deathfire Grasp wasn't quite available for Senkux, but it didn't matter. He will have it available should he be chased down further, but NIP just don't have the tankiness to offset the damage that's being brought to the table by LeBlanc. She survived through the laning phase, picked up a couple of kills with it as well, and now is incredibly dangerous.
Because LeBlanc has so much damage, and we've seen how she can instantly delete people from the map, we've already seen that through this game, is actually opting towards the defensive item of Zhonya's Hourglass, which will increase the damage, but is maybe not the biggest damage alternative we could see from LeBlanc so far, but is feeling comfortable enough to go for a defensive item, and everyone on this team is. So you were mentioning before that NIP will primarily have that AD damage. It's only going to become worse in the next couple of minutes because they have more gold, and they have more gold to dedicate to building tanks.
Yeah, as soon as they do start building those tank items, it will be difficult for NIP. They're already starting to struggle a little bit. You see Jinx has gone Bloodthirster followed by Last Whisper. And now Jinx will get the added attack speed from using the switcheroo, staying in the Gatling gun form to make sure that she takes up her attack speed, but that does wear off. That is not permanent attack speed that you'd expect from a Static Shiv. Neither is it the added wave clear that Static Shiv brings, so they have to expend mana on Jinx to be able to use the rockets to take down waves.
But they're being forced into this itemization. They're not being optimal about it because they can't at this stage. NIP are not far enough ahead where they could just carry on itemizing big AD items because they need to start cutting through the armor. And this has just become an arms race between these two teams, and Reason Gaming have more gold to play with.
They do indeed. And another side point on the Jinx build, when was the last time you saw any AD carry build boots other than Berserker's Greaves?
Right.
That's how dangerous LeBlanc is in this game. Mercury Treads picked up. That is highly inefficient on an AD carry. Great for not dying to magic resist, but not good for your outputting damage.
Yeah, and free Merc Treads, in fact, from a team. I haven't seen that in a long time.
Well, it's needed right now. As you said, forced into this itemization.
That's another turret falling to the team of Reason Gaming, and they are literally just roaming as 5 with the knowledge that NIP, there is no chance they will 5v5 fight them. They are opting to have Mundo split push, and he has been split pushing for a long time, forcing Reason Gaming to make some sort of big move. and the big move is going to be that Baron. Mundo teleporting up to try and contest this, and this feels quite desperate from NIP.
Yeah, Mundo is pushing down in the bottom lane as well, so he will be available from that teleport, as you said, but doesn't look like Reason want to push in, and the reason is because they already know NIP have to deal with the minions in their base.
Someone is going to have to deal with that, and Reason Gaming actually go ahead and recall instead of keeping up the pressure. Probably some big items to finish, more than likely, and in fact, it was the pink wards from Wukong, so they're gearing up to make sure they have control of this Baron area.
Yeah, and that's a really important factor, is that they have pink wards. One is available per player, so you can have a maximum 5 out per team on the map, and the more pink wards you can have out, the more vision denial from your opponents. And we discussed earlier how difficult it is to clear out defensive wards from a team, that it's so nearly impossible to put a pink ward in every spot and to sweep at every spot. But you can see the vision war here for Reason. They have 3 sweepers, and they aren't looking to engage because they know it doesn't favor them.
Hook across the wall, lands onto Beansu, but he is trying to be the person who gets those hooks onto himself. If he's dragging this to the team, then that's, well, the advantageous position for Reason Gaming. NIP taking what advantages they can, but they have just grouped themselves up for this engage from Reason Gaming. Tibbers comes down, and the Miffy gets exploded. 0-0. Their front line is already disintegrated, and they have a very squishy backline. There's the shutdown. Zed was able to take down Renekton in that trade.
NIP had to fight that. They had no option. They were cut off from their own base as Super Minions were pushing the last wave down towards the middle lane. So they had to do something there, and unfortunately, the fight did not go the way they would have liked it. They give away the dragon, they gave away 2 kills as well, and Reason Gaming looked pretty comfortable here in this game.
9-5. I mean, NIP weren't necessarily the favourites going in, but these are some evenly matched teams. So we head into this game, and we actually said at the start, but we are going to jump to a quick replay of that last fight.
Yeah, and you'll see here at the beginning, the positioning. Reason have already cut off Ninjas in Pyjamas. They had to land the hook, but Flash Tibbers came out on top of it. The box tried to disengage from this, but Beansu is already on a rampage and is doing so much damage that was a really simple team fight for Reason. They didn't get the hook that they wanted. Ninjas in Pyjamas just couldn't really do too much there and were forced to back away.
Ninjas in Pyjamas didn't want the fight in the first place. They just wanted to try and get the dragon and go, and they just assumed at this point in the game they'd have enough damage to sweep it, hopefully out-rotate them, and just back off again. And that extra influx of gold might have been enough just to finish a couple of items and put them ahead, but it just put them further behind because Reason Gaming managed to get there in time before they finished the dragon and picked it up themselves. So it just went from a bad situation to an even worse one.
And an even worse situation to that is 3 members of NIP are not in their base, and Reason are already at the steps. Reason don't quite have the vision on, I think it's Armin and Freeze were around the top side. They didn't have vision of them, so it's a smart choice to rotate down towards bottom where there's already a wave pushing in. Another wave will join shortly, and they already have good pushing potential. NIP couldn't defend that yet, but the members are starting to filter into this lane, and they should be able to defend this should they choose to engage.
Miffy is connecting the hooks, but even under the turret, on these outer turrets, not quite the fight they want. The Reason Gaming are fairly squishy. They just output so much damage in such short of a time that they just can't fight it. NIP under turret might be able to do something. Beansu is fairly tanky. He's got 2 big defensive items already, and because they are itemizing armor over AP, they'll be able to dive turret sooner.
The difficulty Reason have is the gold lead is slowly closing the longer this game plays out, if Reason don't start getting kills again, because NIP are getting a lot of minions pushing in towards them. You can already see the CS difference from having waves naturally push in with the aggressive team, is the defensive team can get more CS from those waves, and you can see that's already having an effect. The gold at one point, I believe, was about 5,000, but is now down to only 4,000. That's, right. It's a slow close on the gap, but Reason have to be careful this doesn't drag out for too long.
Yeah, as long as NIP stay in this game, and it's only 26 minutes in the game, it feels like 50 because of how fast this game has accelerated. And the kind of ebb and flow of the field, but Bonnie D takes a lot of damage heading into this fight. Zero backs off. Super Mega Death Rocket comes through, but Beatsu is already being chunked down. They are fairly squishy. Sencooks has jumped over the wall, but he's 1 versus 3. Will be taken down as well. Just being out-team fought. Chrislin also dropped. There's 4-1. Huge advantage to NIP.
Yeah, NIP with a massive team fight there. Bonnie D just face-tanked the start of that fight. No flash available, so couldn't use Tibbers right where he wanted it to. Took a lot of punishment, and NIP end up cleaning that one up.
So NIP are just going to go straight onto the Baron, and it doesn't look like Trashy can or will contest. It's going to be Freeze actually zoning him away, lands the zap, and doesn't quite kill the clone. In fact, he did. Extra 25 gold, but he's on the hunt. Trashy forced into underneath his turret, and like a fish in a barrel, Freeze will pick up that kill.
And this has just turned on its head here for Reason. Reason had control, but I'm getting deja vu.
Yeah.
So game number 1, Reason had control. They pushed forward. NIP killed them. NIP grabbed a Baron, and then Reason pushed for the win.
Okay. All we need to see now is NIP sit in the Baron pit, kill them twice, and then for Reason Gaming just to finish.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what we're expecting.
All I'm saying is,
but it could happen.
All I'm saying is NIP just picked up momentum, but the momentum just evened the game out in gold. Yes, NIP now have the Baron buff available, and we are just headed into a pause by the looks of things. So hopefully this won't be too long. This didn't feature in the first game.
Yeah.
So I think
it's already broken the cycle.
We've broken the cycle. It's not a case of repeating game 1 again, but that means we do have to wait a little bit longer to see the conclusion of this game.
Yeah. So that influx of gold will allow NIP just to be a little more aggressive for the next couple of minutes, which is something we haven't seen NIP do before. And I'm actually interested to see if NIP have enough damage and enough boost in stats to go for these fights.
Yeah.
Because all the way through the game, Reason Gaming just group up. They just take up all the objectives they want because NIP do not have a chance of fighting them. But with this influx of gold, will they start trying to do that?
It's one of those questions and again, I think to answer this, you have to look at the gold distribution between the champions, which you look at the lineup for NIP, 5 kills are on Jinx. That's a brilliant place to be in these team fights. They've got a kill on Kha'Zix, which is fine. He's itemized as you'd expect Kha'Zix to, and all he needs is like 1 kill or assist in that team fight, and his itemization isn't quite as important as the amount of damage he can output from the reset. And from there, they do have a significant damage, provided they get that first kill. That's how the last team fight before Baron really went so well from them, was Barney D acted as an initiator there for a reason. You can see we're heading into game again, but Barney D acted as the initiation, but then died and gave the resets over to Ninjas in Pyjamas.
So Reason Gaming, their front line isn't quite in the right place. They do a lot of damage, but they've itemized too much damage, and they're getting to the point where if they are caught, then NIP will just literally destroy the back line, and Beansu won't do enough. They've not gone... It's an odd situation where you're actually saying they haven't split their items enough, where usually you're like, well, if they split their items, go hybrid, then they didn't really do anything. But in this case, they're too squishy, and Beansu doesn't do enough damage.
I think at this moment in time, they've actually reached a good point. The fact that they now have 2 Randuins available and will have extra defensive items on to Renekton does allow them to survive through the team fights a little bit better. I think, obviously, that Seeker's Armguard will now be closer to being stacked out by LeBlanc, so she'll be a little bit better protected there. It just depends on where Chrislin will go for his defensive items. If they can keep Chrislin in the fights as well as LeBlanc getting those early picks, then it's a good play for them. But the problem is they haven't been getting LeBlanc or Chrislin picks in the past few minutes.
Yeah. Right now, NIP, they do have that Baron buff still on them, even though we did have that pause. It didn't start ticking down. That's not how pauses work. But Ninjas in Pyjamas, they are still being aggressive, but they're just not looking for team fights. They still respect how strong Reason Gaming are. And rightfully so, as you said, those double Randuins will make it difficult to kind of find a way and navigate through that team fight. At least this time, NIP can pick up that dragon uncontested.
Yeah, uncontested this time. They're pretty happy about that one. Of course, Kha'Zix does have considerable damage with the isolation on Dragon. Dragon's a little bit lonely.
He's always going to be isolated.
You think that Dragon would give Baron a call once?
I know, right?
Now and again. They might go hang out.
At least like 50 minutes of the game, Dragon might just decide to walk up river.
Just have a friend.
Say
he's
hi
not
to
just
Baron,
sat there.
so he's not isolated.
It must be a pretty lonely life being Dragon. You pretty much are stuck in that pit, flapping around, and then someone comes and kills you every 6 minutes.
Flapping around.
Well, that's what he doesn't sit. He's there just hovering. Like,
I don't know. I wouldn't like say a dragon is flapping around. Well, I wouldn't say like Shyvana's flapping into the opponents right now with Dragon's Descent.
The difference between Shyvana and Dragon is Shyvana looks quite menacing,
right?
Whereas Dragon just dies every 6 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so not often that you see Dragon kill anything.
It's more the white that kills people, man.
Yeah.
That thing is deadly.
It is.
A lot of players I've seen that thing claim.
Everybody always underestimates the damage from white because it dies pretty quickly, but then it just hits you, and you. Oh, okay. I think I died to it in a game a couple of weeks back, actually.
That's not something I would admit to.
Well, you know, I think being in Challenger, I'm allowed to.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, even NA Challenger players, you know, die to red buff and stuff like that.
That's true. It's very true. Certain players. I'm not going to name any names.
No names. But back to the game at hand anyway. As Reason now will be looking to play the defensive role here against Ninjas in Pyjamas, who, you know, after picking up that Baron, are a little bit more confident in their positioning here, and we'll see whether they can find themselves the team fight that indeed would favor them.
NIP, despite being ahead, well, having the momentary increase in damage and increase in stats and all the rest of it, they're still not strong enough. So as soon as Baron wears off, then we're going to have the same thing that happened before the Baron.
Yeah. We're in one of those situations where these teams are not close enough to be completely even on gold, and that is in this game, but their skill level is close enough that they respect their opponents, that a slight gold lead is not enough for them to close out a game.
Okay, so more items are starting to be finished up. More importantly, the armor penetration, I mean, which is going to be, you know, more influential in these engagements, because as an all-AD team, you have to go for those armor penetration items earlier than you may usually want to. Maybe the Black Cleaver on its way for Kha'Zix, but definitely the Last Whispers are being picked up all around the board.
Yeah, and as we talked about, we're reaching the time where the armor will be offset by that armor penetration. That's so important here for Ninjas in Pyjamas. And NIP have already found themselves some pretty good team fights here, and I'm wondering whether the clock is running down on Reason with regards to their team fights, because everyone's getting pretty tanky. LeBlanc is going to struggle a little bit to get some of her targets, unless she is able to get onto Jinx, who will be a squishy target.
Well, against AD compositions find themselves a brick wall when you hit the mid-game, but Reason Gaming are looking to force the issue. There's huge movement speed increase. That's the fastest caster minion I have ever seen. And now they are pushing down the mid lane, trying to find themselves 0-0, taking a lot of damage. Will be actually pushed down here. There's no way he's going to get out. In fact, he might get out. 0-0, but they have to flash for it, and the Cyclone. They're using literally everything. We've seen this before, Stress, where everything is used on a single member.
This time, NIP can't really catch up. And if they can get the inhibitor from this, that was completely worth it by Reason. Normally, when you see a team burn everything, they don't get the payoff from it. And Reason take a big hit from a static Shiv proc. Grizzland drops very low as well. Reason may have used too much there.
They've used everything that helps their engage be a good engage, but they can still engage because they have Barney D, but they have nothing behind it. So they can't go for a team fight. Despite 0-0 being dead, NIP are being very aggressive, just pushing down the mid lane, and they can be. Grizzland is very close to biting the dust. Sencooks is below 40%.
And that really means that NIP have the positioning they want. Baron is about to spawn. I think that was a very good force there by NIP. They read the situation very well, and while NIP won't be able to take down the Baron, they've established the ward control first. which gives them that vision around Baron and will aid them in deciding when to fight Reason.
Yeah, they had to push out their base at that point, because if they didn't, then they would be left sat in their base, sat by their inhibitor, and then they wouldn't be able to push out, and they wouldn't know if Reason Game were just sitting in their jungle somewhere. So that has given them vital information which they otherwise might not have gotten. Reason Gaming gone back to base, come back into the fray, and we'll see if they can rinse and repeat. Some of those cooldowns are coming back up, and in fact most of them have.
The thing is, with an exposed inhibitor, it's easier to get a good position on inhibitors than it is to go for a Baron, because obviously you pretty much know that if you're pushing an inhibitor, your opposing team is going to be sat right by it to defend it, whereas Baron, you're not always sure unless you have perfect vision control. So Reason will make sure their lanes are pushing. You can look at top lane, see that it is a big stack heading in towards the top tower, and now they can decide when they want to fight for this inhibitor rather than edging around Baron.
And it looks like they're just going to edge around the inhibitor instead here, Stress. Can't quite find the right opportunity, because NIP, if they do pick up the wrong person, the team fight will just snowball out of their favor. And especially when they're so pushed up, there is nowhere to run. If you're taking down an inhibitor and you get engaged upon, you're not going to be able to run away again.
NIP have really extended their gold lead through CS right now. If we looked at it a little bit earlier, and at some of the lanes it was 40 CS, now it's nearly up to 100 CS difference in some of the lanes, and that's not a good for Reason. It means that while they've had control, their gold income has been considerably lower, and with NIP picking up objectives at the same time, it means that Reason's gold over time is severely decreasing, as is their control of the map.
It's pretty funny, because NIP aren't typically or necessarily running a composition that's great at counter-sieging.
Yeah.
Yet they've extended the game 36, almost 37 minutes against someone like Sivir, who is the best siege and kind of controlling the pace of those minion waves. And NIP have just completely stonewalled them.
Senkux right now had a brilliant start to the game, went 2-0, but I kind of feel like without constant engagements, LeBlanc just kind of wears off a little bit here.
And it's not like NIP are really rotating between lanes very often by themselves with individual players. So it's not like Senkux can just stop someone who's trying to pick up a buff. They're moving as a unit. And now they are being way more aggressive. Dragon is live. That will be taken down. Nifty gets dropped low by Senkux, but this is a big investment. Nuke Duck finds him. Will be taken down. LeBlanc with Death Mark. That's another ultimate use. Trashy onto Nuke Duck. Chrislan has come back, but this is the huge flank from NIP. Amin is unable to really find his entry into this team fight, but Beansu is getting chunked by NIP Freeze, who is just going to take him down. Get excited. Look after another kill. Bonnie D gets taken down. There's another reset. And they're just mopping up this fight. Trashy, again, is the last person remaining.
And again, they were just looking for that pick. And Senkux used so much to get the kill there that, again, LeBlanc's presence is just running out here. They have to expend so much in map position and also lives to be able to even use LeBlanc here that NIP are able to pick up one kill, get the resets, and chase down the members of Reason Gaming, and now they'll secure an inhibitor at least.
And Ninjas in Pyjamas can push so quickly with a Jinx, especially because it's been so long since we've seen Jinx hit something, like a turret. They drop really quite quickly. Baron is still alive, and they might be able to get it on this rotation, and there's nothing else on the board for them to really contest over, so they pick up the Baron, they recall to base, and Ninjas in Pyjamas are once again ahead.
Yeah, I don't think NIP will go for it now that they know they have to clear out a pink ward. The timer just hasn't quite worked out for them. The ping did go down on it, so, I mean, they might be thinking about it, but they have to know that Reason are back around now, so there's not exactly the right window of opportunity for them to take down Baron.
Yeah, they weren't super decisive about it, so by waiting around even for a couple seconds, that meant that Reason Gaming were able to just loop around the side and come back from base. But still, an inhibitor down, this time to the team with NIP. And starting to finish up some bigger items. That's going to be the Banshee's Veil, picked up by a couple of these members.
Yeah, and Banshee's is an item that really has seen a comeback in competitive play. I mean, Season 2 was pretty much the season of Guardian Angel, but ever since Season 3 and Season 4, the defensive item choice has switched a lot more back to not dying initially, because of how difficult it is to stay alive once you have died once. You don't come back on full health, so very difficult to defend, whereas a Banshee's Veil becomes relevant every 45 seconds after it's been popped, so you're able to absorb a lot of the initial engage. So a flash Tibbers will not work on members that have a Banshee's Veil.
Yeah, definitely going to get way more value out of that one, especially when they're laning against or playing against someone like LeBlanc. It basically blocks that big combo. We are in the season of champions who do combo more than in Season 3, where you have LeBlanc, and if she misses the Sigil of Silence, then the next Sigil isn't going to do nearly as much. You need everything to land.
Yeah, you need a lot to land with LeBlanc, and that's one of the issues, is they just haven't been landing everything. He tried another engage, but put himself out in the open.
0-0, all of the Talisman of Ascensions have been popped. Trashy's clone will take a beating, but NIP just trying to find the right avenue into this fight. Again, it has taken them a while in the previous engagement stress, but it's always happened.
On the Hunt was actually used there for Reason, which is significantly a more potent ability than the Talisman of Ascension. It provides a significant speed boost and the attack speed boost, and all of the other brilliant stats for team fighting. So the fact that that won't be available will reduce Reason's ability to team fight somewhat in the next big fight, should they choose to fight without On the Hunt being available. But a two-man Baron attempt is coming up for NIP. Can they burst that one down before Reason are able to react?
I think Reason may have twigged the fact that two members have just disappeared from the map, and Freeze will have already backed off, so has Mundo. What do you take Baron to? About 50%. Actually, they almost took it.
They did have it fairly low, so I mean, another couple of seconds would have been enough for NIP to secure that Baron, and that would have been a very difficult position for Reason to come back from. But the Banshee's Veil saved Freeze from his first death in this game. LeBlanc wasn't quite able to take him down. They're going to try this Baron again. This time they got all 5 members there, so they're going to burst that down and use the box to disengage. Yeah,
plus they've got the Colic. Trashy is going to try and smite this one, but NIP are still tanking the Baron. Beansu is still there. Bonnie D flashes forward, but he gets the Tibbers onto the right people, but they're just tanking straight through it. 1-for-1 trade so far. Krillin gets dragged back into the fight. He's unable to get anything done. They are just evaporating. Double kill for Mundo. Trashy and Beansu, they are tanky. They just don't have the damage past everything else, but 0-0 is slowly getting pushed out. He goes back in. Miffy gets dragged out, and Nuke Duck lands another Razor Shuriken and picks up that kill. A very messy team fight, but 4-2.
Very messy, and at one point it looked like Reason had the better of that one, and NIP, for a part of that fight, even had Freeze tanking Baron, and NIP tried to force that Baron, couldn't quite get it again. And they put themselves really at risk there. Trashy does get hooked in.
Again, it looks like he will be picked up using Nimbus Strike to jump to those minions. And, well, that's a very dead clone, but not a dead Wukong, who's still trying to retreat, wasting as much time as possible. And even if he dies right here, at least he stopped them from taking a turret or indeed the inhib.
But there's a big minion wave, and Trashy hasn't been able to recall. He would have wanted to recall from that bottom lane turret fell. There's a lot of minions on the inhib in mid. It doesn't look like it's enough to take it, as Annie is there in front of the inhib. NIP look like they want a Baron again, but we're going to a replay shortly of that Baron fight. You can see NIP attempting the Baron, use the box preemptively to try and zone out Reason, but they're able to find a way around it, and the box actually goes down before they're able to utilize it. And in this fight, you can see Freeze tanking the Baron and members of Reason Gaming, and had Freeze been available, this would have gone a lot better in favor of NIP, but at this point, Trashy and Beansu managed to turn it on its head somewhat, but then stayed around a little too long. You can see they want to fight here and choose to back away, but don't quite get the escape over the wall. Nuke Duck picks up the kill, and that solidifies them an advantageous team fight.
Manu stayed alive for way longer than he should have done, but middle inhib will be falling. Freeze will make sure of that. Okay, there we go. Just making sure that happens. I think he was expecting that last auto attack to bring down that inhib for the next couple of minutes. But 0-0 is still hanging around the mid lane. Nothing really to fight over. And I believe Baron was picked up while we were looking at that replay.
Yeah, 0-0 and the rest of NIP did pick the Baron up. So that gives them that extra pushing power with the inhibitor down in the middle lane as well. They'll swap their attention either top or bottom and make sure they're pushing through as much as possible.
And this game is very slowly finding momentum shift into the hands of NIP. And Reason Gaming aren't necessarily running a team which can come back from when they were behind.
Yeah.
Especially against a composition who are progressively going to get stronger. And these assassins now have some kills on them. They're looking really strong. And Reason Gaming, okay, you can build more armor, but we've already gone past that road bump where they've had the increase in armor, but now we've got the armor penetration, which will cut through that.
Yeah, and these prolonged team fights really will work out in favor of NIP. Reason want to burst people down as fast as possible and get out, but NIP, the longer they can shred through your armor and get it as low as possible, that will favor them. And they'll really want to fight those fights all day long. And they can wait out somewhat until they get the first reset, as long as they don't die. As long as no members of NIP die initially to the burst damage, the longer the fight goes out, they can get the kill, get the resets.
And there's been several Black Cleavers being picked up as well.
Yeah.
So those are going to stack up on the desired target very, very quickly. There's a lot of champions on the team of Reason Gaming who will still drop almost instantly from a single combo from many of these members from NIP. So Zero just showing that he takes very little damage from turrets, and he should be able to dive this if that's what they want. Miffy lands another death sentence onto Beansu. Not quite the right target, but they will be following up. Sencooks taken down to 40% HP. This might be the engage they want. Dragging Chrisland into the team, completely out of position, forced to flash backwards. The On the Hunt has been used defensively, and now NIP are looking to siege in this middle turret. Super minions are battering down the front door, and now the bottom inhib is sure to follow. Beansu takes a zap. Going to be very slowed down and unable to catch up with his targets. Amin puts off some of the targets, trying to get back to his team. Lantern comes across, Tibbers comes down, Trashy lands a huge cyclone onto Free, but they're just too tanky at this stage. NIP have the tankiness themselves. There's one kill, and now it's just the cleanup time. There's the second. Trashy is still alive, but Chrisland is going to die underneath that those double turrets. That's a 3-in-1 trade. There's a 4-in-1 trade, and this will be the game. NIP taking this game and taking this series 2-1.
They will close that one out as they turn their attention back to the Nexus. But in that last fight, Reason felt like they could take it, but they hadn't realized that that armor was non-existent from a very prolonged team fight. It had already been shredded down by those Black Cleavers, and as soon as they went to engage, Zed came in, Armin jumped in on Kha'Zix as well, and they put so much damage down and burst the team down so quickly.
It's not something you really keep track of, the fact that how many Black Cleaver stacks you have on you before an engagement happens. But that's what NIP were doing. They weren't fully engaging until they had those Black Cleaver stacks up and they had the armor down, and then they just engaged. Wukong went in and did no damage because now the armor had been itemized by NIP as well, and we saw them take the series 2-1.
Yeah, and what a series that was. Back and forth action. We saw everything, including that explosive end to game number 1. Now, we are going to head towards our third best of 3 of the day. I know it's very quick, guys, but we are trying to make sure we keep all of our teams going into games when they're supposed to. So we are going to head to a very short break before we come back with the third best of 3 of the day. It's Cloud9 Europe, Cloud9 Eclipse, up against